Hello, my name is Richard Diver, and I am joined by my colleague Rin Ure, author of the SOC Process Framework. This is video 4 in an 8-part series, and in this video we're going to take a deep dive into the analytical processes and procedures. We recommend that you follow along and by opening this workbook in your own Azure Sentinel instance. And if you don't have that open, pause the video, go and get it now, and then come back and start the video again. Okay, hopefully you're back. And so Rin, tell us more about this section of the process framework.
All right, thanks, Richard. Appreciate that. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the SOC analytical processes and procedures. We're going to dive into these next sections of the workbook per the next videos. So we have a few sections that we want to cover. We're going to cover the analytical processes. We have some business processes, operational processes, and technology processes. And each of these sections of the workbook are carved out a little bit differently than the rest of the workbook because of the amount of detail and granularity that they go into for each of these processes and procedures that help a SOC be able to operate and function effectively around the day-to-day operations, the business metrics, KPIs, the technology processes, and the things that you're going to be doing and thinking about within your SOC to bring this to bear. So let's dive in on the analytical side. As you can see on my screen here, I have the analytical process page pulled up. So we've got our analytical process procedures. And when you load these processes, you're now going to have a table of contents. Within this table of contents, we're going to call out what the process name is and the subsequent procedures that fit underneath that process. So you'll have that table with any description and comments that fit into the procedures that map that. And then on the right-hand side, we have a submenu. This menu snaps to the table of contents in relation to the items that you see here with any of its additional description and comments. So in our first sub, we want to first look at the intrusion analysis process. And this gives us kind of a purpose. It gives us an overall look and feel of what the scope is and the process summary. This really is all this is doing. It's kind of helping the SOC management and the SOC team understand what the responsibility is around the analyst to measure and monitor the incident blade. We're going to be spending quite a lot of time in these next series of videos looking at the incident's blade, looking at how to deliver on the operational side of things around the incidents and being able to deliver incident triage, incident response based on the analysis procedures, the operational procedures, and how those pieces fit together. This section really calls out the detailed steps from a high-level perspective. It looks at a comprehensive view around current state of information, security threats, vulnerabilities, and really kind of giving the analyst the type of things that they need to consider as they're delivering on this section. So that's really what this is. This is that high-level portion as you step into this section of the workbook. In the next section here, we have the incident triage workflow and narrative. This is really important, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time here. So this is the procedures by which the SOC analyst is going to look at an incident within the incident blade of Azure Sentinel and deliver on the type of threat intelligence, the type of information fusion, and the things that they need to consider when making recommendations and triaging those incidents. So we're going to dive a little bit in there. We've also carved out for you the workflow diagram. So we've brought out that investigate portion of that diagram. We've put that in here. We've called out the incident annotation stages, which we're going to step into in more granular detail here in a minute. And then we're looking at the steps that make up a collaborative workflow around the type of stages that an analyst is going to look at towards the type of annotation they're going to add. Okay, so Sentinel gives us the ability to add those stages and the annotations through tagging. And we're going to show you what that looks like here within today's video, and we're going to show you at a more deeper granular level on the operational side of things when we get into those videos. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit further. We have here a table, and in this table, we have the incident annotation stages by tags, and then we also have the incident triage stages by tags. So this allows you to be able to understand what those tags are going to be and what those tags mean when you see those tags show up as it is applied to an incident inside Azure Sentinel. Let's take, for instance, queued. When we look at queued, we see that Azure Sentinel incidents by default are queued by creation and contain all alert events that come into Azure Sentinel. What I highly recommend doing in order to reduce the amount of workload that an analyst needs to do for queued and triage is to build what we call automated workload or automated workflows within Azure Sentinel. Let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go pull up. This is the incidents blade. You can see some of the tags and some of the pieces that are already snapped to the incidents that are coming in here. Now, what we've done is inside Azure Sentinel, we've given you the ability to build what we call automation. And inside of the automation, we have here annotation stage queued. We have annotation stage triage. So within the annotation stage queued, you can see that it's going to add that queued stage to the tagging of any incident that comes in, and it's looking to queue all of them up. Now, some of them, we know that we want to triage. We know that these are things that an analyst needs to immediately step into a triage phase. So there's a bit of a hybrid here in the way that I have things set up. You may want things to look a little differently. That's okay. Just know that you have the options of creating an automated rule within Sentinel that gives you the ability to tag each of your incidents so that now you have your incidents that are mapped directly to the workflow built into the SOC Process Framework. In this instance, we only have 18 rules that are set to tag with triage. Based on what those rules are and the severity and criticality of those rules, we know that there's a lot more data, evidence, and maybe even some automation on the Logic App Playbook side that are snapping to these rules to provide additional context. So now an analyst can make better decisions around that knowledge during the triage phase of the incident process and the incident response process overall. All right. Let's go back to the SOC Process Framework. So you're kind of seeing now how the staging works. You're kind of seeing how we're applying that staging. We're going to get into it a lot more granular, a lot more deeper as we continue to talk about it. But now I want to kind of pivot back to each of these so that you get a feel for what these stages are. Now, you may have different stages. You may have a different way that you want to apply annotation. Let's say you have, processes in place today. This is completely customizable. Remember in our previous videos, you can come in, you can make any additions that you want into this workbook and into this section, right? You can change out the wording, the nomenclature. If you don't want to use the words queued or triage or update incidents, you can certainly change to the type of nomenclature that your business snaps to. This is important, right? Because whatever you pick, whatever nomenclature you're going to follow, your business needs to understand the terminology and description behind that nomenclature, right? Everyone needs to be on board on what queued means, triage, how to update an incident, what does it look like if an incident was previously created, right? If it's under investigation, so on and so forth. When we do get into the incident triage stage, this means that an analyst has taken it, they've applied ownership to it, and they've opened it up, put it under investigation, right? So that's really what that means is it's open, it's under investigation, queued and triage are now moved off, right? It's easy to apply tags. Let me show you kind of what that looks like. So in here, again, let's go into our incident portal. And what's really easy is I can do a quick lookup. And if I want to look up for queued, I can now do a search for everything that is queued within my environment. This gives me the ability to see, okay, within a 48-hour period, I only have 7 that are queued that have not been triaged, that have not been applied some type of level of triage with severity that I know an analyst needs to go and make an effort, right? This helps on a couple of things, couple of metrics to consider. That mean time to triage, that mean time to remediate, right? That mean time to respond. All of those KPIs really tie back to the type of response that you're providing inside any type of SIM for that matter. And in this case, we're snapping to those type of KPIs within Azure Sentinel by leveraging the tagging annotation. So here I have things that are queued. If I wanted to go look for things that I know I need to triage or add additional information to, I can also go look for that. I can type in triage and see what is triage, where they are, if certain severities have been applied, and I can kind of get a really good idea of what I need to do as an analyst and where I need to step into. These are just some really important things to consider when you're looking at the type of annotation stage that the process framework gives you in order to help you try to drive to a quicker remediation and a quicker resolve during your incident response process overall. All right, so now let's pivot back to our framework. So we have a few more things here. We've got open and escalated, waiting for information, as well as some closed things that are talking about if it's false positive, remediated, insufficient data, no risk. Now, this kind of adds more context above and beyond what we offer within Azure Sentinel, because we can tag it and then we can build those KPIs off of this tagging. Now, Sentinel does offer a lot of options within the closed portion of an incident. One of the things, however, that it doesn't offer is that closed no risk or closed other, right? So this is above and beyond what is already added, giving some additional context and giving the ability to then create a KPI and measure that outside of your standard closed operators, right, within the Sentinel blade of the incident portion. So that's really what this is doing, is it's thinking through all of these operations from that side, giving you more context, giving you a richer way to add that context. And if you feel like this needs to be added to, please, again, this is customizable. If there are sections in here that you feel like, ooh, you know what, we need it closed, but let's give it more granular detail around, like maybe it's insufficient data mapped to a data source. Maybe it is no risk, but let's call out why it's no risk. Or maybe there's some other type of a piece that you want to add to it. Feel free to update this table as it applies to your business. Let's now pivot back to demonstration, and let's kind of look at what it might look like for under investigation. So when we have something that we want to take away from triage, and we want to see what that looks like, we can then come in and see, out of all of these incidents, what's currently being worked on, who the owner is, it's active, what severity, we can see if anything has been escalated. And because Sentinel gives you a rich integration with Azure Teams, we now have the capability to spin up a war room and provide an incident team so that you can see which one of these is in a war room, where I may have additional incident responders or external members that fit within an organization that are providing richer context to the assets, to the service, or to the identity that may be compromised that I'm working on. So all of these pieces here really drive the type of incident response that most SOCs are looking for, so that now we can see even what metrics, right, or what tactics under the MITRE attack kill chain as each of these fit. I've got some lateral movement activity, some exfiltration of data. I've got some command and control. I've got a lot of pieces here that gives me kind of an idea around where things are going. And this is important because as we are delivering the type of security operational excellence, we want to make sure that you understand how to operationalize within Azure Sentinel and deliver that type of operational excellence, not only to your analysts and to skill them up so that they know how to apply these processes and procedures, but as a SOC manager or an incident commander or someone from the incident response team can now come in and see exactly what those workflows look like within the incident blades of Azure Sentinel. All right, pivoting back a little bit more, our incident triage process, the way that we are thinking about it and are calling this out, this really is the primary analyst's responsibility. So this would be a level 1 analyst, a tier 1 analyst, right? They're coming in and they're looking at the incidents and alerts, and they are applying the right triage process, and they're taking on whether or not it should be triaged, if it should go in under investigation, if it's a false positive, apply no further action, if it is deemed actionable, right, that they need to conduct the type of analysis and compile more information. What do those pieces need to look like? And so this really kind of calls out how to apply the annotation stage into an incident as it is fired on from the alert side. Then, once that's been triaged properly by the primary analyst, we then step into what the secondary analyst role is, and that's the investigation process. This really is where the rubber meets the road, because now it's been triaged appropriately, and that secondary analyst can go open it, put it under investigation, and go look at what additional evidence they need to gather in order to drive to a remediation. If they need to call out to or call out to external resources, if they need to change the severity, if they need to change the criticality, they have the option to be able to do that based on the type of evidence and knowledge contextually that they have to drive that, right? And then if they decide that they cannot resolve this, kind of going back up to our workflow, right? Because this is our workflow, this is kind of what this looks like. That secondary analyst is asking themselves the question, can I resolve? Can I work to resolve it? What does that look like? Do I need to gather more information? And this is also, again, as I talked about, how they need to apply that triage procedure and that severity matrix. They're making decisions based on the assets, the information around identities, services, apps, right? All of these pieces that could potentially be compromised that are critical to a line of business. That's the decision that they're making around this. And then if it falls outside of what they're capable of doing, this is where they make that determination, I need to escalate, and they open up that incident response process, whatever that may look like inside your business, right? So if you've got a third-party ticketing system that they snap to, and making sure that you're passing all of this good information to that, or one of the things we recommend is that you continue to leverage Azure Sentinel as those pieces around the entities, the alerts, the events, and all of that goodness, and even bookmarks are captured together. You could then escalate to IR and have the IR team work out of the Sentinel incident portal, just as your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 analysts are working outside of that portal, right? So now you get a cohesive work stream across multiple analysts and investigational processes all up, no matter which team those analysts are on. So just some food for thought there. All right, so if they do decide to escalate to an incident response team, this is that section. This is really where the incident response team takes that and they run their triage process. So this may look a little differently for your line of business, but what we've thought through is what that incident response team needs to routinely check, how they need to look for those incidents that are tagged, escalated to the incident response team. They may be looking for events within their investigation leads towards false positives. They may be looking towards knowledge transfer and findings from the primary and secondary analysts that comes from the shift logs as it's been documented. They're also looking to declare that incident ownership on their side. And so incident ownership could change from analyst to analyst, analysts within the SOC to maybe analysts within the incident response team themselves, right? And so if those two teams are cohesively working out of Sentinel together, this is where the annotation stages can apply that level of granularity so that now they know when I go in and I do my search, they know that this is what I'm looking for. So let's kind of show you what that looks like. So when I look for escalated to IR, we can kind of see we have one right here that's been escalated to IR. We can also see that it is tied to a SEV3 and it's under investigation. So this has been escalated. So now it is moved from the SOC analyst team to the incident responder analysts team, and now they're going to continue to drive that. Right now it's owned by me, but an incident responder on that team can take and change ownership, right? Once we give them the ability to escalate, they could come in and change that ownership. And now here's the great part is Sentinel's going to track that change of ownership. We're going to track that for you so that you can see when an incident changes hands, so that you can be rest assured that that each of an incident as it pertains to KPIs are being measured effectively from an analyst that started off that investigation to an analyst that closed out that investigation, potentially on another team, right? So that now when it changes hands, those KPIs and those metrics are changing along with the ownership of that incident. All right, come back over to here. Yeah. Okay. So last but not least, really is the, it's the incident response team that's going to identify that external team that they need to escalate to with recommendations from the SOC analysts. Keep in mind, the SOC analysts are going to have a lot more knowledge around the day-to-day alerting and monitoring and the things that they are watching, depending on how often you have your security operation set up. If you are tied to a managed service provider and they're providing a 24/7 service, that may be your frontline. That may be your level 1, level 2 analysts that are doing your initial triage or your queued and triage, and then your tier 3 team may be your in-house team that's your incident responder or your tier 3 all up, right? And so your MSSP may be escalating to your tier 3 that's in-house within your line of business. And that team may then be working to deliver and bring in external teams because now they have that constitutional knowledge. So this kind of helps you bring those pieces together as you're thinking about it, both from your line of business in-house and or if you're partnered with a managed service provider. And then last but not least is what that incident closure workflow looks like, right? Kind of a high level thinking about how to close an incident, reviewing the details of that incident, any indicators of attack or indicators of compromise, what the attack vector might be. But most importantly, and we talked about this in the last session, root cause analysis. What is that root cause? Helping to then build that back into the maturity life cycle, build that back into the incident response life cycle, as well as in the monitoring life cycle of incidents and alerts going forward. All right, so we've kind of covered the first two here. The next section is our incident analysis section. And so when we click on incident analysis, this gives us the incident analysis procedure. This is really important. And what we've done is we've built a complementary playbook. This is an automation playbook called Get SOC Actions. And Get SOC Actions is going to work in conjunction with the section here called the incident analysis procedures. This is important because as the analysts are working together to triage, to put things under investigation, and to make decisions around an incident and grouping incidents together based on host, entities, identities, assets, applications and services, whatever the case may be, right? They need to understand what actions to take to go gather additional evidence, to go gather the type of bookmarks and pieces that they need to bring these pieces together to make a decision. Do I escalate or can I remediate? Can I close out? What does that look like for me as they're asking themselves these questions as they go along the way? So what we've done here is we've kind of given steps around grouping events for analysis, understanding the attack, asking questions around source IPs, destination hosts, identity, identify the hosts, identify identities like accounts, whether they are service principals, users, domain admins, who has most privilege, who has least privilege, is it towards a high value asset or target, What does that look like so that now I can make the right determination around that severity and criticality as it pertains to the incident that I'm working as an analyst? Some of the other things here we call out, is it external or internal, right? What's the directionality of communication? Identify the attack vector. What is the initial attack? Did it come through email? Is this through instant messaging or IRC, malicious websites? Was it a redirect? Or is it on the OS based on an application, vulnerabilities through a browser, or things that may have been downloaded or clicked on through email? Could it be potentially around a host configuration, things within services, shares that are connected, and data downloaded? Or is it tied to accounts and passwords and that accessibility through those accounts to those high-value targets? So looking at that attack vector kind of gives you a well-rounded approach to what that root cause might be as you're stepping through and asking yourselves questions around the incident and how that alert was generated. Next, we're looking at kind of the researching the context of the attack. So asking questions that you may consider. What did it do? How was it infected? Is there a known malware associated? Did it disable services or drop files? Was there a propagation method? System level or share level infection, based on the host as well as on the account side. What's the probability that that infection is spread across your environment? And how far has it potentially spread? How do you identify and contain? So this really gets kind of into that assess and contain portion, not doing those actions, but asking yourself the type of questions that you need so that you're looking at the holistic side of the picture around the incident, so that when you're ready and let's say you do go to war room, you can ask those kinds of questions, right? What's the file path and name? Like where did this land and how did it get installed? What services executed under it? What parent processes may have kicked it off, right? A lot of these things that an EDR solution can answer for you. One of the things that we do within this framework is integrate host analysis. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and how to leverage our XDR platform to do some of the type of host analysis, which snaps to these research questions around this attack. Some of the other things to consider, right? If we want to identify devices that are attempting to communicate with a known bad IP, right? That IP may have malicious activities or nefarious other activities, hashes, files that are known associations to that type of IP. This could come from your threat intel feeds. It could come from external threat intel feeds or other type of source of intelligence that you may deploy within your business to kind of help ask some of those questions. Step 3, then we talk a little bit about how to analyze and assess the impact, the overall impact, right? How successful was it? How many hosts were involved? Was it blocked? Was it successful? Were there identities and accounts, that were compromised? Was it a service principal account, or was it a domain admin, right? Or was it a local admin? Or was it just a basic user trying to get access to some of those other identity types? Whatever the case may be, you want to be asking yourself questions around these type of activities so that you get a good understanding and idea around the overall impact of the attack. Where was the attacker IP? What was attacked? Was it done in the DMZ, corporate systems, databases, apps and services? Was it cloud? Was it on-prem? What did they try and do? Where did they try and go? What data did they try and access? Was that data touched? Was it read or was it exfiltrated? Was it copied off? Who was it sent to? Was that data protected? Right? Being able to understand all of that type of information really, again, helps that analyst makes the type of contextual decisions that they need to. And then once they have all of this information, understanding the breadth of the attack, understanding the nature of the attack, right? Then they can start to make determination around what action is needed. Do I need to escalate to my incident response team? And then do we need to consider escalating to an external team for, ownership of apps and services and production environment that may be outside of the scope within the SOC and or the incident responders, what does that look like? What actions do we need to take per process and protocol? And make sure that you're snapping to those again. Coming back to the nature of do no harm, right? We really want to make sure that these are the things that you're thinking about, you're asking questions about, and that you're snapping to, so that everyone has the ability to participate in this as you're working, outside of silos, but you're bringing people now together to participate and to drive the best action and the best outcome based on the incident that you're working. Then from here, once you have that determined action to be followed up on, you can then start to think about closing incidents, reporting that into your shift logs, escalating your incident, and or creating incident, right? That's kind of what we've done here is we've called out what those typical actions are going to be. You're going to have certain actions that are going to have a little additional context. If you're closing things out though, right, you're going to want to be using the annotation stage of closing things out. You're going to want to assign closure to it because once it's closed, then we can apply the right KPIs from that mean time to triage, to that mean time to respond, and to mean time to remediate, right? These are the important KPIs that we're looking for to understand how efficient is our SOC working and how efficient are these processes that we've put in place, being able to drive the right actions to these level of incidents. All right. The next section is our information fusion section, and this covers the fusion procedures. This is a very short section, not a lot here. This could be flushed out a little bit more from your line of business, but really it's to kind of give you a high level view of what that information fusion procedures kind of look like. So this kind of ties into the daily intelligence report and the weekly threat report as it snaps to what the senior SOC analysts are going to be doing to produce those reports. Along with those reports, they're going to be reading current intelligence reports. They're going to be looking at daily intelligence that cover the latest threats, external news, operational news, any type of information that comes into the business that fits into that arena. They may be querying Sentinel for additional events that may correlate with the news that they found. So doing some proactive hunting provided by those intelligent reports and bringing what they find back into either the Sentinel as an incident and or tying those pieces back as bookmarks into an under investigation incident that may already be underway. They're also going to be looking and to review news and messages that may be coming by email or other communication methods, and then relaying any news of significant events and messages that are provided by these teams and updating the shift log accordingly, along with any evidentiary pieces that may come out of that need to tie back to working incidents that a SOC analyst may be delivering on within that work shift. So this kind of is a high level view. You may feel the need to flush this out a little bit more in detail, but at a high level, really, this is kind of what that fusion looks like of information. It's driving threat intel. It's bringing in threat intel feeds. It's thinking about how we can apply threat intel to the daily alerting and monitoring within Azure Sentinel, how we can apply that. And Sentinel does a really good job of leveraging threat intel from third-party sources as well as first-party threat intel directly into the threat intel platform of Sentinel, and then allowing you to turn on and enable threat intel analytics as it pertains to any of those data sources that you ingest to deliver a correlation between the data sources that may be outside of threat intel along with those threat intel sources and bringing those pieces together. So now there's a confidence level, there's additional context from that threat intel to help any analyst make a better decision.
I think that's a really key point there, is the idea that we can't just keep throwing more information at analysts, right? They need to know that the threat intel is specific and relevant, and you don't want to go chasing down something that's 5-6 years old necessarily. I do see sometimes that customers and SOC analysts are looking for how do I create a checklist, or how do I create an action item for each specific threat type. So I think from this you can start by having at least a generic approach to everything you're going to do, and then link to any specific use cases where you know there's a certain set of steps and actions you should take based on, as you get further down the findings, then you know that this is leading down a certain path. Is that right?
Absolutely. I love that. And that really is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to reduce that noise and that friction during any type of incident response process. Let's dive a little bit into focused monitoring. So this section kind of covers at a high level what focused monitoring looks like. This is really giving an example around leveraging live stream. So on the focused monitoring procedure, it's leveraging a capability that Sentinel offers to go and focus around data that you may want to monitor for a period of time before making a decision. Do I turn it into an analytic, or should I use it as a hunt query? Should I take this and turn it into some type of an incident? Should I use it to gather more evidence and apply it as a bookmark and attach it to an undergoing investigation, right? Focused monitoring procedure really allows the analyst a little bit of flexibility on this side to think about what they can go after and closely monitor. Now, live stream is a feature within Sentinel that allows an analyst to monitor live as data is being ingested from any data source that you've configured. Live can then bring, based on the query that you have constructed and the data set that you're looking at, can pull out all of that at the time data is ingested and show that to a screen along with a Spark. We call it a spark line, and that's a trend line of activities as it's being trended over time within Azure Sentinel. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit, and I'll show you kind of what this looks like. So on here, we kind of have our description. This kind of gives you right, some things to think about, source IPs, destination IPs, any relevant historical information from entities like hosts, IPs, processes, apps and services, users, whether they're basic users or privileged users or users that may fit within a service principal that apps and services are leveraging in order to make their communication and connections, right? Thinking about it from all of those things, any incident related events that may be triggered that may have the same source, and so that you want to note that and maybe triage or monitor all activities from a given host or all activities from a given user, and then looking at the originating, alerts and events from that initial source. So really thinking about it from that side of the house. And then we call it the procedure side. This gives us the ability to create that live stream based on those pieces, right? Those entities, those indicators of attack or compromise based on the type of assets that you're looking at. And so now you can drive additional activities in a more lively manner to make a better contextual decision. This could also help with slow and go attacks. If you know you've got something that's happening, a slow and go attack, which may happen over the course of many days, you could turn this on into live stream and watch this over the course of the next little while to see if this is something that's happening on a regular basis as a pattern, and to be able to pull this back and to make a determination around what to do with it and how to action on it once you have a little bit more additional information. Then we step into an example, how to create that live stream from scratch. And I'll kind of explode this a little bit so that you kind of can see as we kind of dive into this. This is leveraging a security alerts. This is leveraging the Defender for Endpoint around suspicious PowerShell command line. In this particular example, looking at PowerShell based on compromise, and then it's pulling in some of those custom entities, the host, the IP, the account, timestamp, bringing in some of those pieces so that we can turn that live stream on. Once we have that live stream session, then we have that spark line I was sharing with you so that we can see kind of where those events are over time as it's running. And we can kind of then see what that is. In this particular instance, we're looking at Zscaler, where the device action contains allow, but we're also joining that then with heartbeats from other events, right? So you can do a complex query, or you can do a basic simple query, depending on where that data lives in the data set of log analytics, and make sure that you are getting the best combination of analytical experience as you're bringing that into your KQL query and applying it here to the live stream. And then the beautiful thing about live stream is we will then give you a notification for new events as they happen inside the Azure portal notifications. So live stream ties directly to the Azure portal notification. You do not need to set up a notification for this. You can see those notifications when you're in the portal. It will pop up and it will say, hey, Sentinel live stream, one new result for threat intel map, entity based on Zscaler botnet callback. Right, so you can see this pulled up, and I apologize for the granularity on the screenshot, but this really kind of gives you an idea of what live stream can do from the capability perspective as you're thinking about how to take that Intel Fusion, as we've talked a little bit about that. We talked about some of the stuff on the incident side, but now if we need that additional context or gather more information, we may have to put that incident on hold and leverage something like this feature to go grab that additional information to make a better decision.
That's really interesting to see. It's a bit more than just being reactive to an alert that's being raised, but now we're actively looking for an attacker that might be going after our systems or trying again and again to get in. And we're going to see that come up immediately and not again wait for another event to happen or another too late moment.
Yeah, it's definitely a great feature in that side. And when we bring that feature in conjunction with the hunting blade and those hunting KQL queries, that we've got a lot of folks that like to take those queries as a place to start and modify them slightly and then apply them into a live stream to watch that type of activity so that they're not having to go into the hunting blade and rerun those queries, and deliver that right all the time, right? They want to be able to kind of mix and match. And so the beautiful thing, though, is live stream lives inside the hunting blade itself. But you can now see where you can take pieces of the library of hunt queries and mix and match them into a live stream and be like, okay, there are pieces here that I feel like are contextually important to my line of business, and I know that this activity may potentially be going on. Let's actually go watch it. Let's deploy the focused monitoring portion of the process framework and see what we can yield from that side of the house. All right, this next section we're going to dive into is our SOC use cases. This is going to be a really straightforward section. Not a lot here to really talk about, but there's a lot here to consider. Not a lot to talk about in the sense that this is a table. And the idea behind this section of the workbook is really, really, really simple. It's all about deployment. So what we considered was how to onboard use cases. And this table allows the SOC manager, and the team working with the SOC engineers to onboard the analytics that live within Sentinel, whether they're custom or templates, doesn't matter. So the idea really here is to have an onboard analytics key. And we can come in as any analyst and see, oh, this use case is on hold, or it's in development, or it's in test, it's being SOC tested, right? I don't need to, apply the type of annotation stages that I'm used to. It would simply be tagged for testing to confirm that that's the analytical use case. It's not overly noisy, looking at the IR, processes and procedures that need to be applied and or updated. So really, that's kind of what that one's giving us. Green is approved, currently in test, but it's approved for production, and it's waiting to be moved to the incident enabled. And then blue is production. Blue is any alerts that's been added, I know that are blue. I know that these are the things that I'm going to be triaging. It's going to be coming in as queued. And I'm going to be working as an analyst to deliver that type of excellence around that. But anytime I see something that I've not seen before that shows up as an alert, I've never seen that alert, this now gives you an index, a table, if you will, to come in and quickly identify, has this been onboarded? Is this in production? Do I need to triage around it? Or is this something that is currently in development or in test? Right? So that I can make a decision on whether or not I need to do something with the alert in question. So that's really what this is. This is for the SOC side of the house, and both the analyst side, the manager, and the engineering team to work in conjunction together to decide what's been onboarded, what's been in test, what's in dev, and to keep this type of a table updated, right? So that there is a great way for any analyst to come in and know when new alerts are being onboarded, because you're going to see a life cycle. Things are going to be updated, things are going to continue to change, and this section really is to address that change. It's to address as new things are being added to that SOC workflow, that we're not overworking the SOC, but more or less we're being very prescriptive and we're being very intuitive to the way that we're onboarding those, and then everyone knows what that process looks like and they're all snapping to that. All right. Host analysis process. Again, this is how to think about how to do analysis on a given host. In this particular example, what we talk about is how to apply Azure Sentinel and Defender for Endpoints together to do raw analysis. So this section really is looking at what that looks like from that side. We have a summary, we have our scope. Our scope is to confirm that validity and severity of detection. It's also to look at the validity and severity of symptoms and or behaviors as being reported by the alert, looking to confirm validity of abuse complaints, right? Of around what type of complaints may be coming from the SOC or to the engineering team. So that it also satisfies that requirement. Maybe it's too noisy. Maybe there's some things that need to be scaled back. Maybe there's some custom rules that were put into place. And just being able to understand what that might look like from all of that. Then it's looking at the inappropriate content. This again goes back to our message, do no harm. And so we're taking into consideration where the SOC may need to disengage from a host investigation, things to consider. And in your line of business, there may be additional bullet points to be added into this section. For here, though, we've called out 4 that we feel are highly probable and highly practical to consider when that disengagement needs to happen, where the escalation to a SOC manager needs to be included, to the IR team and or to HR, right? Where information relative to the investigation could represent a potential compromise. And understanding that compromise, may be larger at scale. And so we want to disengage. We want to pull back. And so we want to note any steps that we've already taken. We want to note any files, directories, processes, tools used. We want to note all of those things, especially within our shift log. We want to note those things within the incident itself and the comments of the incident blade. But then we want to take, and again, do no harm. So come in and look at the, not taking screenshots, not modifying files and folders, and not copying or modifying or deleting any of those files, and do not engaging team members or their respective managers if identities are compromised. And understanding, the importance of that do no harm as it relates to these. Again, you may have other areas that you want to add to this around that disengage portion of this section, but we felt it pertinent to, specifically call out those 4 areas. Internal privacy concerns. Again, this kind of is that do no harm, looking at You may have workloads that cross international boundaries. You may have data that crosses international boundaries. So we've really kind of thought through where that differing international requirements may fit for your business, and to think about that. And so, we've kind of called those out here. This, again, is a section that could be additionally flushed out, but we've given you some high-level things to think about in this section as well. Malicious content. We want to make sure that we're always storing, that content in a password protected, encrypted, way. Zip files is one example, but we want that data to be protected. We don't want someone to accidentally get access to that, whether that is an internal user or making it accessibly available to an attacker. So thinking about when we do download malicious content for triage, for detonation, to understand, maybe you have someone on your team that unpacks malware and unpacks viruses to understand those kind of pieces. And maybe they're working in conjunction with our team. We have a detonation team that looks at this as well. And so we can deliver on that type of sample detonation and sample sharing within our own incident response team here at Microsoft. And so we have a lot of customers that are kind of sharing that back and forth. And so we just want you to think through how to protect that data as you're pulling it down and you want to do additional forensics on that data. What does that look like? All right. In this next area, we really kind of call it the prerequisites. So this is getting into that Defender for Endpoints live response. And so live response gives you the capability to hop onto a host through the Defender for Endpoints engine, be able to then deliver on custom scripts and or packages or things that you may have already built in-house that you want to deliver to pull back forensics detail, and or leverage things that are built within the Defender for Endpoint stack. And pull back investigational packages that we offer built in. But this really calls out both the prerequisites on what to consider before running a supported version of live response on a supported OS, as well as how to initiate that live response on a session for that device. So we've kind of thought through those pieces, giving you some additional information on how to pull these things together, what to consider, and then how to kick things off. In this next section, then we call out downloading a file in the background, bringing those files over, putting that file into a library or to a repository, how to upload that file, what to do with it, and how to look at it. And then any additional commands or running scripts, we've also given you some documentation links that will really kind of help you see what you need to do from that side. The last piece, though, is around that roles and responsibilities, where the SOC analysts are to conduct that host investigation within parameters. Parameters, again, that go back to the do no harm mantra, following a defined procedure that is either built in or expanded upon within this workbook, and or line of business procedures that you may already have, and then what that looks like. And then the SOC manager, as they're responsible for a successful execution of this process and procedure as it's tied back to this host analysis portion. So this really kind of gives you kind of that additional portion, is if I need to go gain additional evidence and knowledge as it pertains to a host I'm investigating, activities on that host, things that may be above and beyond what your traditional XDR may have given you or told you in relation to the alerts that were passed through to Sentinel. So this kind of helps you walk through what that may be, what that may be as far as procedures to follow. Again, that do no harm, any limitations or boundaries that you need to snap to, any external teams that need to be notified or brought in during this type of host investigation, making sure that all parties are aware, hey, we're investigating this host. We may need to, separate this host from the network. We may need to reset passwords. We may need to pull down additional investigational package. We may need to do some additional forensics around that data. Whatever that may be, this can be flushed out to kind of snap to that business model that you need that meets those limitations or boundaries and or scope that you want your SOC and or incident responders to follow. All right, this is a smaller section. This is kind of our subtle event process. And this one kind of then is our high level that then dovetails into our data exploration. So this kind of gets into the hunting side. So one of the things that we want our analysts to think about is, yeah, they spend a lot of time doing day-to-day incident management. But we also want them to think about, subtle event process and going in and hunting for data sets and data that may not fit the alert and incident response management process, right? These are things that we know are happening in the environment, but that may not be alerted on today. They may be, tied to a MITRE attack tactic. I may know the type of tactic or kill chain that this activity snaps to. It may tie to malware, botnets. It may tie to, other type of tactics being leveraged within your business. And so thinking about it from that side, how to go and leverage this type of a process to go find that type of activity. So at a high level, this is really what that process summary is calling out. It's around looking at significant intrusions and attempts that are missed in that standard operational monitoring, right? So that comes back to what analytics Sentinel is firing on. Sentinel's only as smart based on the analytics and the things that it knows about, in conjunction with Sentinel's fusion machine learning model to tie in and correlate across those entities, those data types, and that machine learning model. So we're thinking about it from those lines, but we still need to consider that there needs to be a human factor, and the subtle event process really addresses this human factor. So this is the high level of the human factor. So now we're going to get into the lower level, and that's the data exploration. Inside the data exploration procedure, really we're hunting for threats here. We're taking advantage of built-in queries. We're taking advantage of the Custo query language and its IntelliSense built on top of KQL that gives you flexibility to look at hunting, take it to the next level. You can come in and you can see what hunting is going to give you. You can create bookmarks. We talked about live stream. You can take a query, modify it, turn it into a live stream so that you're watching that data live and creating, data points as that query returns results. And it's creating that mark on that timeline, that spark line, so that you can kind of see when things are happening. It also allows you to build out notebooks for automated investigation. And notebooks ties back into the Jupyter notebook, the Jupyter side of things, where we may build out additional machine learning models, models that tie back to Python machine learning or R machine learning, along with a data science VM or other type of machine learning capabilities within our Azure services. So all of these pieces allow for the hunt for threats. And that's really what this data exploration is it's giving an analyst the ability to spend a little bit of time throughout their day-to-day going and hunting, building hypothesis, thinking about the data that lives inside their environment, thinking about what is fired, what hasn't, so that we're reducing that burn and churn of those analysts. We're giving them an opportunity to triage. We're giving them an opportunity to investigate. We're giving them an opportunity to hunt. So we're kind of rotating through each of those areas as we're talking about the analytical process, because this helps with that burnout. It helps give them the ability to level up skill. It helps give them the ability to think about the day-to-day operations a little differently throughout their day. And it really kind of helps so that you're not just throwing alerts by the wayside. Oh, false positive. Oh, this is just noisy. Oh, we just need to do away with this. So this really kind of helps move us into more of a proactive approach on the analytics side, while giving you the ability to help with that burn and churn on your personnel side. We're going to give you some examples around how to start hunting, how to leverage the hunting blade and the hunting queries within there. So dive into this section, spend a little bit more time opening the hunting blade, starring which ones that you want the hunting blade to run for you automatically, and apply that where applicable to your line of business. And then if there is area, or there are areas that you want to consider outside of this, we've given you some additional context here within our docs.microsoft.com for hunting within Azure Sentinel. But this is pretty straightforward on the data exploration portion. Well, my friends, I'm really grateful that you've joined us for this session, this session around the analytical process part of our framework. We've covered a lot within this section, but I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that we were able to talk in depth in a lot of these areas. And so, Richard, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Hey, thank you, Rin. It's a great overview of a lot of content. Didn't have a lot to offer in this one. I was just listening and learning like everyone else in the audience. So join us next time. In the next video, we'll be looking at the operational processes and procedures. Thank you, Rin.